Liverpool had been on the economic and social decline really for about 25, 30 years. And of course, when you get that level of economic decline, all the other associated social problems emerge. The use of heroin, the use of other hard drugs.
Correct.
We had the HIV/AIDS crisis coming. Everything bloody awful came together within a couple of years. Meanwhile, musically, there was quite a lot of music.
Especially the music that was coming out of Merseyside.
Hi, I'm Stacey Jackson.
And I'm Roy Bassnett.
Join us for the Gen-X-Perience podcast every other week.
So if you were born between 1965 and 1980, that makes you a Gen Xer. And that being the case, that makes this podcast for you.
We are interviewing the most amazing people from all over the world in all walks of life, discussing culture, music, and politics.
The range is incredible. You're going to get to hear some wonderful stories.
So join us every other week for the Gen-X-Perience podcast. I'm Stacey Jackson.
And I'm Roy Bassnett. So once again, it is another episode of the Gen-X-Perience. My name's Roy Bassnett. And what's your name?
Stacey Jackson.
That's it, Stacey Jackson. So we are back and we are here in Pod Cafe where we are recording today. And since I spoke to you last, at the time of recording, I've actually celebrated, or I'm in the process of celebrating my birthday
I
today,
know,
as it
it's
turns
a
out.
Big milestone birthday.
Yeah, it's not very often you're 40, is it?
Yeah, 40-10?
20.
40-20.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's a Gen-X-Perience podcast.
Yes,
if I'm not the demographic, then
I
I'm
was going to
cheating
say,
people,
and if
aren't
you
I?
can't be proud of your age, then, you shouldn't be here.
You've got to knock it on the
Yeah.
head. So you've made the journey up all the way to
I know.
Liverpool again to record here.
I
so,
love coming to Liverpool.
Before
you have the most interesting characters living here.
Well, there you are. Before we get into speaking to our guest in a short while, because we do on occasion, me and you, I'll have a little conversation. Some episodes are like that where it's just me and you. But we highlighted a little bit in previous episodes about stuff that you do. So what's happening in Stacey Jacksonville at the moment? Because you're a singer, you're a writer. Bear in mind, this is Stacey's book here. We'll talk more about that in a short while. What are you up to at the moment then?
Well, just finished the audiobook for that book.
Yeah.
And so I narrated the whole book. It's 6 hours.
That's not actually true because I narrated a little bit of it.
Yes,
as well,
you did
didn't I?
actually.
So,
You did, and it was so good. You read the about the author part. But what's interesting about the this particular audiobook, it's obviously loosely based on my life, but it's fictionalized. I wrote a whole soundtrack to go with the book.
Right.
So it's the first fictionalized narrated book that has musical integration in it. So yeah, it's really exciting, and that's going to be launched this spring. So yeah,
and for
very
the benefit
exciting.
of people who are listening thinking, what is that book? It's called How a Gangster Rapper Made Me a Better Mom by Stacey Jackson and Ruth Elkins. You've got to big up the Ruth Elkins there.
Yeah,
as well.
big her up, that's for sure. She's awesome.
We'll come back, obviously, in more episodes, and we'll talk more detail about that. But today
Yes.
I want to introduce you to somebody I've known for quite some time, actually. Now, you could arguably say that at this time of recording, we are in the presence of greatness because this man has a podcast, right? It's called Misadventures in Music. And this podcast, at the time of recording, was 16th out of 100, right, in a musical history chart of podcasts.
Wow.
Dolly Parton was only slightly ahead of him in the chart. But Gary Newman was behind. His name is Mick Ord.
Yay!
And there is Mick Ord, who is, well, there's no point in me saying who Mick Ord is. Better to get it from the horse's mouth.
This is the first time I've met you, but I've heard a lot about you. And it's an honor to have you here today on the show.
Thank you.
So give us the sort of highlights of Mick Ord.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm a podcaster, as Roy has mentioned, and I do media training as well. So I media train companies or councils, local authorities, health people. If they're going to appear on TV and they've got a crisis, it's part of their crisis communications package. So I do a lot of media training as well.
Great.
And I spent an awful long time working for the BBC, and I left there 10 years ago.
But you weren't just working there. You
No,
were
no,
like
well,
one of the big mucky mucks there.
Well, sort of. I was I was boss at BBC Radio Merseyside here in Liverpool for 17 years.
Love Merseyside.
And before that, I worked my way up the greasy pole, as they say. Started off as a reporter.
Right.
Then I became a producer, then news editor and blah, blah. And then I left there in 2012 to work at Media City in Salford. And then I took voluntary redundancy 10 years ago, and now I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Well, do you love doing the podcast? Because
Absolutely.
I can, you know what, there's just so much freedom and expression. And I just, and you know me, I've got the gift of gab.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this podcast thing was like a no-brainer.
I can assure you that Stacey Jackson will be expressing herself in
yes.
some very flowery
I'm going
terms.
to try to keep it together today, though, because I'm in the presence of greatness here in terms of the news and music of the 80s in particular, because that is one of the reasons why I jumped at the chance to have you in. I'm so glad that you came into the studio today. I want to ask you a few questions because, as you know, the podcast is called the Gen-X-Perience. We're about roughly the same age. I'm a little younger.
I suppose realistically, if you're thinking about it, we should kind of vet him and see whether or not he is.
Oh,
a Gen
well,
Xer.
Go on then.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think, let me guess. No, I'm not going to guess because I'm so bad at that. I'm going to, you know how old he is.
I'm going to say you must be similar age to me, who is just arrived in his 60s.
Yeah. Well, I'm 68, 69.
No way.
No, you're as old as that, Mick.
Wow,
Yeah.
you look awesome. No, actually, I'm surprised. So
I'm
you're,
surprised,
yeah,
yeah.
you're a lot older than me, but that's okay. You're still part of our Gen-X-Perience. Okay, so but I am wearing glasses, so I'm an old person now. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you about, well, let me sort of give you the where I'm going with all this. Because you worked in the 80s and obviously here in the UK, that was like such a big, not just political, obviously, but also a massive musical, era. And being at the BBC at the time, how much of the politics and what was going on in the 80s and music did you have to, how did you balance all that being the program director there? Like there was just so much, like what was like a day in a life of being back there in, let's say, 1985?
Well, 85 is a good year to start, actually, Stacey. At the time, the local council in Liverpool was a left-wing council, very left-wing, probably the most left-wing council.
This would have been Derek Hatton period, wouldn't it?
It was called the Militant Tendency, and they were in charge of the council. And it was probably, if not the most left-wing council this country has seen, certainly one of the most, certainly in the past 40 years, easily. Yep. And Liverpool had been on the economic and social decline, really for about 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. So when after the Beatles left, if you like, in the early 60s, the economy was on a slippery slope down. Yeah. Liverpool was built as a port, and the port, all the money that came from the port, that started to go away. Mm-hmm. The number of people employed on the docks went away. Various governments tried to push some economic policy into the area, which didn't work. And at the time, although large parts of the rest of the country were voting in Thatcher, who was like Reagan, as you said, Liverpool became more left-wing because it was more in decline economically. So there was a big clash between the two.
Absolutely.
So every single day, and I'm talking 7 days a week, there was usually a story to do with the political situation locally.
Of course.
And of course, when you get that level of economic decline, like there was in New York and other parts of America in the 70s and 80s, all the other associated social problems emerge. The use of heroin, the use of other hard drugs.
Correct.
We had the HIV/AIDS crisis coming. Yep. So everything bloody awful came together within a couple of years. And so every day, if you're working in the newsroom, you're having to deal with this stuff. Meanwhile, musically, there was quite a lot of music, which was part of that political fight back.
I was going to say that the kind of political circumstances of the time kind of framed a lot of the music, especially the music that was coming out of Merseyside.
Yeah, correct. I mean, there were so many. We talked about this on one of our shows at Liverpool Live, where there was so lyrically, a lot of the bands had a lot of political protests in their messaging, and then of course also 1985 was the Live Aid, right? And so you're right, musically and music and politics were synonymous almost.
Yeah, in the 1980s, they were inextricably linked. Not so, you don't really see it now, but it was, I think you needed to kind of take a position in order to produce music in the 80s.
Yeah, I think so. And I think more than any other era, the 80s had political music. Not all of it, obviously, but more than the 60s, I would say.
Yeah.
Certainly in the UK, I'm not saying it's the same for America. It was slightly different there, obviously.
It was riskier, and they took the risk. And you know what? They also had a platform, MTV. Yeah. So not only did they, were they singing songs and people were dancing to it, DJs were playing it. Now there was a much bigger platform. They were able to influence with their lyrics visually, also on television, so they could tell a story through their videos. Yeah. And so it wasn't just the music per se, it was like a whole package.
Yeah, it was the image, wasn't it? Yeah. So it was more, in inverted commas, acceptable to be out there and gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even in some cases trans in the 80s.
That's right.
And it was regarded as shocking among, more traditional conservative types, and liberating for younger people, and straight people started then to wear makeup. And it wasn't, although you got a bit of that with Bowie and them in the 70s, it was far wider in the 80s.
Correct.
And so it was kind of in retrospect, it was an interesting time.
That's very cool that you mentioned the makeup, because we had this conversation as well about like the rock bands also with the long hair, and the Kiss is a perfect example with all their makeup. And then of course you have, like you said, the gay community and I first of all, to me, there is no other era as the 80s in terms of how it all sort of came together. I don't think, and we could remember all the lyrics to all the songs. We could almost remember everywhere we were when a song came out, when it was playing. Yeah. I'm not sure, and you guys do this all the time. You're in the radio industry, like that the Gen Z, or even the alphas, the kids who are watching the 15 seconds on Instagram or TikTok, are actually going to really grasp a song. And 40 years from now, will they remember the lyrics to a song from Jay-Z or from, do you know what I mean? Yeah. In the way that we know, like every Journey song, Foreigner song, Kiss song.
It's amazing how many songs
Duran,
you
like, and it's crazy because like I can't remember where I put my car keys 5 minutes ago, but I know every lyric from 1982. I don't know.
There you go.
So moving on, because we can talk about this forever. How different was the relationship between the UK and the US in the news and in music, like in the 80s compared to how it is today?
Wow. Well, Reagan was such a massive figure in the early 80s, and Thatcher was such a massive figure. And the way in which the media here portrayed it, and I think it was pretty true, I don't know whether you think this, Roy, is that they were very close, both politically and probably personally as well. We saw them on TV, and they were almost like a double act at times.
Yeah.
And because Thatcher was a very, very strong woman, and he was like an ex-Hollywood film star.
Yeah. They
were on the TV all the time. I mean, nothing like Trump at the moment. But nevertheless, for those times, they were on all the time. And of course, living in this area where she wasn't popular.
No, right.
And Reagan was regarded, I mean, this is maybe moving into different areas, but a lot of the British media and maybe British people have had quite a snobby attitude towards American presidents,
right.
Because I think this is true. I'm not saying it was true of JFK because that's different, but they kind of sneer at them a little bit. And this is probably more a media thing, Stacey, but certainly the newspapers at the time that were really popular, because he was an ex-Hollywood star, they're kind of thinking, what the hell does he know?
I've never thought about that before, but I always remember when we're talking about 80 when Reagan came in. So it was about 1980, something like that. And everyone was saying, oh my God, he's an ex-film star. And then you look at what you've got now. It was just crazy. Yeah. And I always remember, not the 9 o'clock news, the sketch show, making a song about Ronald Reagan being president. And so you are talking about the media there. Even the satirical programs were kind of saying, oh, God, Reagan, he's the president. Yeah, so I get that. I never thought about it before.
And they were very and they were doing the same to the British government, and they were doing the same to the Ayatollah in Iran,
Yeah.
and Brezhnev in the Soviet
Yeah.
Union. Everybody was up there to be knocked down.
And
Has that changed?
Well,
I mean,
I think it has. I don't think there's that level of satire and piss taking and caricature like there was at that time.
Oh, no.
I mean, the programme that Roy talked about, not the 9 o'clock news, was on once a week, peak viewing time at 9 o'clock. You wouldn't get that now. You get Have I Got News for You in this country, was slightly different.
Yeah.
But not as in your face. Not
And
as
then
in your
you had-
face as it was.
you had
Certainly,
spits.
I'm only talking about the UK here. I think it was probably...
He had Spitting Image as well, which was another one. I don't know if you're
God,
familiar.
yeah.
You might know about Spitting Image. These were like kind of big puppets, weren't they?
Yeah.
And Reagan, Thatcher, all of these people were stalwarts in it every single week. And I think the point I would say here is that politics in the 1980s in this country, and probably still is to a certain degree now, we're happy to lampoon our figures. Where there's a bit more reverence towards political figures, I think, in America. Or am I wrong?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, because the internet has changed everything, like in terms of how people, now there's news for everyone. If you are, and in America in particular, it is politics that actually separates everyone. Nobody even wants to talk about it because the minute you mention it, there is such a divide and it's dividing our country significantly. So nobody even wants to, if you're at a dinner party, like from the outside, because I'm, I live here, looking in is different. We can be at an international dinner party and everyone could talk about everybody's politics sort of from as an outsider's point of view. But Americans, it's really tough. You are stuck in one side. And so you look at Facebook or you look at Instagram or you look at whoever your friends are, they're spewing news from where they're looking for the news. So if they're, Republican, they're watching Fox, they're, those kinds of things. Yeah. And if they're Democratic and they're so anti-Trump,
CNN.
Exactly. And it's really divided, and I don't know if that, news has just changed.
Yeah. Let's move away from the politics. Yeah. And let's move into, Mick Ord, young fella. Yeah, he's doing a bit of journalism, but you've always been a keen follower of music. So coming back to the points you were making about wearing makeup at the time, people talk about, Boy George, when he came out, that was something else. But Pete Burns was doing that. Pete Burns, the front man of Dead or Alive, was well ahead of that game.
And they had a number of very public spats because Pete Burns claimed that Boy George nicked his eye.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah.
And then Boy George would come on, and because Boy George was a bigger star, he would say quite publicly, "I'll take no notice of that guy." I mean, it was just showbiz, rubbish, really. But Pete Burns.
But how much was it also the journalists playing it up just to create a bit of banter?
Like they did in the 90s with Oasis and Blair,
right.
the Beatles and the Stones in the 60s. This is what they do.
Right.
I have no idea whether it was genuine, but in terms of my perception, they did not like each other. And that was, like, I used to go to the Camden Palace in London in the 80s, which was a glitzy club that you went to. And it was all like the new romantic era, you know. But they were playing lots of American stuff that the radio stations over here wouldn't play.
I was going to ask you.
So they'd play some of this stuff that I'd never heard before anyway. And then they'd play, Culture Club. And then they'd start to play Dead or Alive stuff.
Right.
So all the
underground.
Yeah, all the underground scene was creeping into the mainstream.
Pet
and
Shop
then all
Boys.
of a sudden Pete Burns and...
Well, I bought into that because, I always remember... Dead or Alive, I would probably attribute Dead or Alive being one of the first bands that I really got into, which influenced my look, if you like, because I was hanging around with a couple of guys who were heavily into Dead or Alive before they sold out with You Spin Me Round, when they were doing Misty Circles, Wish You Here, and all of that.
You think that's a sellout?
It's a sellout. Well, it's not a sellout,
Oh my
but it's
God,
what people say.
I love that song.
But the question I've got to ask you, Mick, as a person who's very familiar with the kind of musical landscape of this part of the world, you might not know this, but Pete Burns was worked in a record store in Liverpool called Probe Records, didn't he? Did you ever go in there and were you served by him?
Yeah. And I can remember going, because he used to wear black eye contact lenses. And I can remember that the girlfriend I was with at the time, we were in this shop, and it was a bookshop. And she was kind of kneeling on the floor looking at some books. And Pete Burns walked into the bookshop. And I thought, if she looks at him straight away, she's going to jump. So I was dying for, and she looked up and she just saw his face, and she'd been busily looking at this bookshelf for about 10 minutes, and she looked up, and I could see her go like that because he had his he's an amazing looking guy.
Yeah.
It was the black eye contact lenses that did it, because I never saw anybody wear anything like that, and he would get a lot of stick when he walked around the streets. But he was a hard guy. He was not remotely, in inverted commas, soft. He could look after himself. He was a big guy. Yeah. He had to force his way through school in Port Sunlight. They tried to bully him there. He wasn't having any of it. He was a tough fella.
Wow, talk about confidence.
But if you looked at him, you'd think he's soft.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you ever listen to Pete Burns' singing voice, it's virtually operatic, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite... So, yeah, and I remember going into Probe and seeing him there. And one time I was buying somebody a record, and I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't a cool record. And he kind of sneered at me.
Oh,
I said, it's not for me. It's for me, mate.
It would have been easier to buy a packet of condoms at the time.
It would have been. And in this shop, the people behind the counter, sometimes they wouldn't serve people if they're asking for a record that they didn't like.
Go on.
Don't have that, it's crap.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I can remember going in for Television. Remember Television,
yeah.
The band. And I went in and I said, can I have Marquee Moon, please? And he said, you mean the single? I said, yeah. And the guy just said to me, that's shite. You don't want that. Get the album. I thought, all right, mate. Yeah. So I bought the album.
Well, talk about a good sales tactic.
Yeah. But they were famous for that.
That's hilarious.
Being rude to customers.
That's so funny.
I mean, it's great to see. The thing is, because when we're broadcast, we're recording here in Liverpool. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time in Liverpool when I was in my teenage years, if you like. It's only, once I got into my 20s that I started being there, especially when I started working in radio. But we just mentioned Probe Records there. Now, there is a famous nightclub in Liverpool called the Cavern, which is where the Beatles were. But at the time, that was well and truly in decline. It was there, but it wasn't really the Cavern, the tourist mecca that it is now. The club would have been Eric's, I would have thought, at the time.
Yeah. And that was...
I don't know that.
Well, that was like bands like Echo and the Bunnymen played there. Teardrop Explodes, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark.
Yeah.
Many, many others whose names you wouldn't know and whose names I've forgotten. But at the time, people would go to see Deaf School and all these other bands that were big in this area but weren't big anywhere else. And then they kind of flowered. Pete Wiley from War. And so what happened is in those days, the 70s and 80s, the NME, the New Musical Express, was the cool music magazine.
Right.
And they would pick up on some of these bands in Liverpool, in Scotland, wherever, and then they would promote them. And they did that because, the music from there was doing very well, but also it was a good way to sell your newspapers. So if you're doing a big feature on Glasgow or Newcastle or Liverpool, they say the week before, next week we'll be going there, and they'll feature bands from those areas. So their sales would push up in those areas.
Wow.
So you had very localised scenes at the time. You had Orange Juice in Scotland, and you had all kinds of bands in Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester, Birmingham. And so it was a lot more kind of grabbable. Now music just comes at you 360 degrees, but then you had actually something to...
But also you were able to watch them come through and grow up and come out of it and then all of a sudden explode. And it wasn't like, like you said, that's coming at you all like on all sides. Having been at the BBC, and you mentioned this before, that obviously some of the music was banned, it couldn't be played, but was it that did turn around? Was it because it was played so much in the US and people were demanding it, or was it because of MTV that it just became, you just said, okay, well, you're going to play it? At what point did you guys make the decision that it was okay?
Well, for example, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. They had Relax. That was banned, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They
Mike
played.
Reed. It was Roy. He was pinned on, wasn't it?
They played it on Radio 1, and then when they actually listened to the lyrics, of course, they never banned Walk on the Wild Side because they didn't understand the lyrics, but they did understand Relax When You Want to Come.
Yeah.
But they didn't think, no one would write about sex like that, Well, then they did, and it was one Radio 1 DJ that refused to play it, and then it was banned. But then it got to number one, and it didn't just get to number one once, did it, Roy?
No.
They kept releasing 12-inch versions of it, remixed versions of it. So good.
Brilliant.
After it must have been over an 18-month period, so many different versions came in. And they were very outre, and a couple of their band members were really obviously gay and were proud of it. And so that was when the barriers towards sexuality, towards fashion, and towards music kind of coalesced and just changed everything.
For me, though, I mean, listen, getting your song banned is a great way of...
I was going to say, it's a great PR, right? It's like, if you can't have it, you want it more.
Yeah.
But for me, I regard Frankie Goes to Hollywood as being one of the best bands to come out of the 1980s, because it's one of these things to put it into context. You can't imagine how different that sound was at the time. The emphasis on that bass, that we were doing it.
It's not because we're actually interviewing Nash.
I mean, Nash is on there. The bottom line is, and I know you're going to be doing them as well quite soon, but I think the thing is, it was that distinctive sound for me. I'm going, as I say, we're recording at the moment, but I'm going to see Holly Johnson in the Arena later this year, which I'm really looking forward to, because he's going to be doing the Frankie songs as well. For me, Two Tribes, if you talk about a song which is not only a fantastic song, but it also really sums up the 1980s in just 3 minutes, that was the power of Frankie Goes to Hollywood for me. I thought they were fantastic. Brilliant.
And what you were saying before about the politics.
Yeah.
The video for that, which I guess would have been on MTV, Stacey, you can tell us.
I remember it.
Was Reagan and Gorbachev fighting each other.
Sorry, tell a lie. Was it Gorbachev or was it Brezhnev?
No, it was Gorbachev, because he had the blood
it is.
the
You're right.
and they were nutting each other.
Yeah.
Now, headbutting each other.
Exactly.
So, would you get that now?
No.
I'm trying to think what the equivalent is now, and I can't think of it really. I mean, you'll know better than me, I suspect.
What would be the equivalent now? Twitter? Right?
It's not in music.
It's not in music. I mean, well, that's not true. I mean, there are different and various messages in popular music, obviously, but and people are less. They're a lot more free. They don't care as much, But it's not as obvious.
No, and at the time, over here, families would sit down and watch Top of the Pops, 7:30 on a Thursday night, and you might see the Carpenters, you might see Paul McCartney, you might see Tom Jones, and then Frankie Goes to Hollywood comes on.
Yeah.
And although you wouldn't have seen Relax on it, I don't think, maybe you would have done. When Two Tribes came on, we all knew what it was about. It was so obvious what it was about.
If there was somebody that, really a young person wants to know about the 80s. If there was one band that defined the 80s for you and you think, that's it. When I think of the 80s, I think of that band. Who would it be?
Wow. Well, I think I'd probably have a different answer for every different hour of the day, never mind day of the week.
Right, okay.
But I was a massive fan in the 80s of Paul Weller. I loved the Style Council.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't after the Jam, but I loved that. But
because he took a very different musical direction.
I think that's why I loved him, because he wasn't afraid to change direction, to do a U-turn and do something else.
Having said that, he dropped a few hints when he was in the Jam, because I seem to remember that the Jam did a version of Curtis Mayfield's Move On Up as well. So he was leaning towards that soul scene, which I think perhaps maybe the other members of the band wanted to stick with the post-punk stuff that we're doing. And he wanted to kind of go down the full-on Northern Soul sound.
Yeah.
No,
him. I mean, but a lot Simple Minds I loved Echo and the Bunnymen. There were so many. And of course, Bowie was still churning out new stuff, different stuff all the time.
He adapted to the decade. Brilliant.
I mean, who else could do that?
Yeah, no. I mean, they were all unbelievable. Sting, I mean, he transcended through the 70s into the 80s, and he was able to, I grew with him, in his music, from The Police to his solo albums and stuff. So, I mean, but I loved everything from, I was a hard rocker. So I love Def Leppard. I like Whitesnake.
If somebody said to you, because I mean, we're going to have this conversation all the time. If somebody said to you, definitive song from the 1980s, or definitive band or sound. Yeah, while you're thinking about it, I'll tell you, from my point of view, it would probably be Depeche Mode for me. If you wanted to sum up the 80s,
right,
Depeche Mode would be.
I mean, let's say we were at a sleepover party and we were 16 back in the 80s. There would be a lot of girls who would be really into like Madonna and that sort of not just the music and her sound, but the whole vibe of it, the fashion and all that. Yeah. Then there was like a group of us who was probably really into more and this is always come from North America, the sort of rock and the hard guitar, the heavy guitar sounds. And so for me, it would have been more like the Def Leppard, the Motley Crue, the Kiss. I just, that's what I liked. And then sort of towards the end of the 80s for me, I got really into fitness and aerobics and all that Jane Fonda stuff. And so the dancey, poppy stuff became more, so I really like Pet Shop Boys and, I don't know. So I kind of changed like along the way.
You love the thing. I know the song that you love because you're always on about it and it fits in with all of that fitness thing. Maniac by Michael Sambello. I love that.
Yeah,
song.
I liked anything that had to do that with a beat, And so then I suddenly got into like that sort of dance stuff because like it was fast, it was motivating, and stuff I wanted to run to or work out to, and then so music for me was like I listened mostly in the gym, really, and the hard rock was fun, but it wasn't like going to make me.
I'm desperate to jump in with more questions here, but it's your turn. Have you got?
No. You actually kind of sort of asked the same question I was going to ask because I wanted to know, like, if you were to have a dinner party. I have two questions. If you were to have a dinner party, like with artists from the 80s, who would you have at the dinner party?
Who would you invite?
Yeah. And the other question I had was, is there any contemporary artist like now that you would think could fit into the 80s or will sustain the time or transcend the time, like a current artist that has that kind of vibe where, respectfully will last?
Yeah, okay.
But I just asked you two questions, so you can answer the first.
No, that's okay. Well, the dinner party one, I think to have Pete Burns and Boy George there would be fantastic.
Yeah. Hilarious.
And I'd also... I used to love, I still do like it when I see it on TV, Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah. She's unbelievable.
I love her voice. She's got a strong Brooklyn accent.
And very distinctive. Oh. The minute she sings a note, it's Cyndi.
Yeah. And she was wild. But I love it. And then I'd want Bowie there. And I'd want Tom Waits there because I love Tom Waits. You could have a cool time with those people there. And then... because of what they did at the time, maybe Holly Johnson as well, because I don't know him, I've never met him.
Right.
And I know he was, such a vibrant and energetic character in those days. I know that from people that know him. And so that band of people together, and there's probably others I've missed, what I mean?
And if it were the case that you were hosting this party back in the day, and we would have walked in and seen, a young... Mick Ord.
Yeah.
What would he have looked like? What clobber would he have had on?
All right, okay. A poor man's new romantic, I suppose you'd say, like, long hair down here. And I used to tuck me trousers into me boots.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff? A bit jangly jewelry.
Pierced? Were you
pierced? Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Oh my God, I remember those days. And like, I had so many friends.
On my earring.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and but all the boys that did that from when I was growing up, it was very British because that was an influence from here.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Because, like I said, like the music was coming over.
Yes.
So it was very. Yeah. So the guys that dressed up like that were guys that wanted to be like you. Yes. and lastly, any artists that you think that from today that you think could have made it in the 80s or
we still haven't. I mean, so many bands we haven't mentioned and all that. One I saw a couple of weeks ago in Liverpool, American band, and I absolutely adore them. The Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Okay, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And they are, they're kind of a throwback to the 60s in some way.
Yeah.
But during the 80s, you had quite a lot of bands that were
Influenced by the 60s.
Yeah, like the Bunnymen were very influenced, I thought, by the Doors.
Yeah.
And the Velvet Underground. And they've got that kind of vibe, the Brian Jonestown Massacre.
For sure. There were a lot of remakes. I mean, Kim Wilde did a song that was from the 60s, right? And so did Kylie Minogue did a Supreme song. And there were a lot of remakes from the 60s that made it
I would hope that the Brian Jonestown Massacre are not too influenced by the Jonestown Massacre, I might add. You know,
No, they just...
Yeah, I wouldn't want that.
Well, with paying attention to the time, we always end our podcast with a little 80s trivia. And I have a feeling you are going to smash this, by the way. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions randomly off the top of the card deck. And so we'll start with Roy. And you just for shits and giggles, as they say.
Shits and giggles.
Shits and giggles.
Shits and giggle question for you here. Then, in which year did Wham play their final concert at Wembley Stadium? Now, see, of all of the questions,
is it a multiple choice?
No. I do multiple choice. I can't imagine that, you've probably got a copy of Fantastic by Wham, have you?
Not as such. I would say, maybe 87.
86.
Close.
Close, but not close enough. Go on, Stacey, give me a question.
Okay.
Go on, yeah.
I don't know if you get this one. It's just very random because it's not musical. In which year was the cartoon Thundercats first aired? Was it, I'm going to give you a multiple choice.
Oh, thank you.
81, 85, or 88?
88?
85.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That was a guess.
That was, I bet you know what? I don't think any of us would have got. Would you have known that one?
No, I wouldn't have got
Okay,
that.
so maybe, you know what? I'll ask you another one. I'll pull this one.
Yeah, but what is interesting, because, I mean, we have predominantly, and we'll have to get you in again, Mick, we've predominantly been talking about music and politics and what have you, but it's about culture from that period as well, and television. We've just picked up on that, and this is another one of those. But I'm feeling you might get this one. 1980s, where we're going. Which character was shot in the TV soap opera Dallas?
Oh, my God. JR.
Yes, you got that.
At least I got that one.
And there's something else that epitomised the 1980s as well for me.
Okay, I don't know if you'd get this one either because I don't know the answer, but actually you're a guy, you might get it. Okay, I'm going to ask you this one because this one we all know. The company 3M introduced what item of stationery in 1980?
I know this. 3M. Think about it, Mick. Item of
Firefox?
No, but that was a really good guess. It's the Post-it note.
Post-it note.
Oh, right.
Oh, no, but Filofax, great guess.
Yeah, we forgot
I loved my Filofax.
Oh, yeah.
Mick, it's been wonderful getting
One
you
out
as
of
I
4.
say. 1 out of 4.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'll end with this one because this is what German phrase was introduced by the car company Audi in 1984?
Come on.
Vorsprung
There you are.
I knew you would know that. I was like, oh, you're
2
a
out
guy.
of
You might
5.
know this one.
Yeah.
Okay, that was good.
You saved me, Stacey. Thank you.
Mick, as I say, we'll have to get you back in again, but just remind us, Misadventures in Music, if people want to download that, available at all our usual platforms, and congratulations for its chart position at the moment. Briefly, just tell us about that, if you would, please.
Well, we started about 4 years ago, me and Ian Prowse, and because he's a musician and I'm a journalist, we thought we'd be a good match in kind of looking into. So we tend to do music history, but when I say history, it could be like we did a big feature on Shane MacGowan. It's anybody from the past, really, and obviously quite a few of them are going today. So we've had Andy McCluskey from Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, did a big feature on Shane MacGowan and his music. And it's really anybody who's got a great story and who's lived and worked in the music industry for their adult lives. And most people have, you know, and it's stuff that you don't read about in the papers or on telly. People are quite frank about what they talk about. And because most of them are a little bit older than 25, they're not as hung up like they might be as the 25. Oh, I can't say this and I can't say that. Right. They just tell you like it is or like it was. And so that's what we do. And we do it every month.
Brilliant.
So it's a monthly podcast. Yes. Oh, that's so exciting. Okay, wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to finally meet you because he goes on and on about you. I think he's...
Steady on.
No. I think you're one of his, little idols. That's great. And that was really, really lovely
Thank
to
you.
meet you and have you in and
great.
hear all of your incredible exploits from back in the day.
Wonderful stuff. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for checking out this podcast, and we shall be back with another one at some point or other. I would imagine. I've not got one. I need to do them things where you go point down below to get more.
Yeah.
There may well be that on the video you're looking at the moment. If not, then you can work it out yourself. Right, Mick, thank you very much indeed. Stacey, thank you, and thank you. Thanks very much for checking out the Gen-X-Perience podcast. Please do like and subscribe. We look forward to your comments, and if you could give us a 5-star review, that would be really appreciated.